Today on the Coach of Why podcast, we have a very special guest. He's been coaching the game of basketball for 30 plus years. As the Lady Cougars head coach, he's led them to 100 plus wins. He's been named Region 19's Coach of the Year, as well as he's guided them to multiple top 25 rankings in the JUCO poll, including as high as number 7. Today, he's the head coach at Camden County Community College. We would like to welcome Coach Chip Reitano to the Coach of Why podcast. With the world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches, and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Casey Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coach's Why podcast.
That was my Coach's Why.
Welcome back to the Coach of Why podcast. We have a very special guest. We welcome our first collegiate basketball coach onto the show, Coach Charles Reitano. Jeez, even though I know it's Reitano. Oh my gosh, Reitano. I know it, but saying that, knowing that I'm from New Mexico, it's hard not to say that. But Coach Reitano from Camden County College up in New Jersey. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Hopefully that was at least a little bit of a laugh worthy. Even though I know that's how I say it, I still said it wrong.
It's all good. All good.
Cool, man. So, I mean, just like everybody else, I kind of want to talk a little bit about you as the athlete and kind of how you got started. So let us know kind of where you grew up and really, when did you get involved in the sport of basketball?
I've been involved my whole life. I grew up in Philadelphia and, started playing at a young age. And honestly, becoming a coach was a lifelong dream. It was something I always wanted to do when I was playing. I enjoyed I was a student of the game. So, whether on the floor or on the bench, I'm always paying attention to every little detail. And I think, watching everything that the coaches did. And as I progressed to get, through playing basketball, as I got a little older and started to think more about it, I had a couple of very influential people in my life that were both coaches and really guided me in the right direction to become a coach. Where it was going to take me, I had no idea.
Right.
When you first start out, you're not sure. I mean, I was volunteering with my old middle school coach and started coaching high school. And here I am 36 years later as a basketball coach. And I've been the head coach at Camden County College for the last 11 years. So
there's a lot to unpack there, which I'm going to get to some of those coaches who influenced you too. I really like to dive into that a little bit. But knowing kind of where you grew up and, kind of where you are now, what are some of the things that you would say has maybe changed in the game of basketball, right? Like the last guy I talked to, he was actually a soccer guy, but he brought up like the LeBron versus Michael time, right? Like two different eras of basketball, but they're their own goats in their own, rights. But I mean, what would you say is something that you might have seen not only as an athlete growing up, but just as a fan of basketball that might be something from, as you said, you've been doing this for 36 years, right? So something from maybe, when you first got into it to now, what are some of the differences that you see in the game itself?
I think the biggest difference is the athleticism. You can see it from, going back to professional basketball when I was growing up, and you had Dr. J and Larry Bird and, Moses Malone, and, they were great physical specimen as basketball players, but they all weren't the greatest athletes. And in today's game, everybody's an athlete. You got 7-footers that are running around like guards used to 20, 30 years ago. And I think that's the biggest change in our game, not just at the professional level, but at the collegiate level and at the high school level, where the athleticism is just astounding to where it was years ago.
Yeah. So knowing that you've seen it all, and I'm glad that you referenced that too, because I think that that is kind of the biggest argument that I've seen is like, well, and granted, like Michael Jordan played a little bit more athletes than like Larry Bird might have, but the whole plumber argument and stuff. But I think that that's just like as a whole, in every sport too. I wouldn't even just say just basketball. I think every sport's gotten better, right? Like looking at football, quarterbacks from, Joe Montana's age versus Patrick Mahomes now, right? It's just a completely different age of athletes. So I 100% agree there. So, whenever you were, let me ask this. Did you get to compete at the next level as an athlete? No. Okay. Okay. I got you. Okay. So knowing that that wasn't, now has that been something that, for me, this might be something a little bit later, but I'm going to jump ahead. Knowing that you didn't play at the next level, was that kind of something that you might have worried about when you got the opportunity to coach, maybe at the high school or college level? Was that something that, kind of ran through your head that you might not have been able to do that because you weren't there, or was that never really a thought process?
No, never. It never really crossed my mind. I think that I was surrounded with good people, knowledgeable people in the world of sports, and I was able to reach out and talk to those that I knew could help guide me as a young coach. And as I started to get a little older, not old, but older,
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
I got a chance to talk to a lot of really good college coaches and high school coaches that I admired, that I felt were very knowledgeable, very smart in the game. They had high basketball IQs.
Yep.
And, I picked their brains and
Mhm.
formed my own style and my own philosophy in how to do things the way I felt was the right way for me as a coach.
Mhm.
And, I've had my ups and downs as a coach, but here I am 36 years later.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're doing something right to stay in the game this long. So, as you were mentioning, like picking brains and things like that from other coaches that you surrounded yourself with and things like that. Who was the most influential person that you might have spoken to on the level of, colleague advice, or, I guess who was the person that made the biggest influence in your coaching career when it comes to having that relationship, and it may be something that they might have told you?
There's a few people. From a, I guess from an advice standpoint, from someone that had done it for a lot of years, um, the head women's coach at Messiah University in Pennsylvania, Mike Miller. He's been there over 30 years. I met him taking my high school team to his summer team camp,
Okay.
and I was able to really pick his brain and talk to him about the longevity of coaching, because it does take a toll. And
Yep.
he had so much to really offer me to as advice. But there are two people that really influenced my decision to do what I do for as long as I've been doing it. Um, One was my former middle school coach. He just he knew how to push my buttons. He knew how to,
Hmm.
as a coach, he knew how to make me a better player. Uh, but he was always teaching me the game, and for me to continue to grow, I needed that. And
Yeah.
when I became a young adult, he was there for me to lean on and for me to sit there and just have conversations about not just coaching but life in general. The other person was my dad. My dad
Okay.
played high school basketball. Never got to play past that because he was drafted into
Mm.
the war,
Yep.
World War
Military.
II. Back then, didn't matter what you were doing; they took you. So,
Right.
um, but he always, built my confidence level. Always um, told me to do my best and to do what I love, and this is what I love to do. And I could always count on him to watch my games. I could always count on him to watch my games and tell me what he thought I was doing
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Um,
Right.
But you know what? I appreciated that. He didn't do it in a derogatory way. He was always positive about, hey, you need to do this. You got to watch this again. And I mean, I've been fortunate to have those people around me for so many years. And unfortunately, my former coach and my dad have passed away since. But I carry everything they ever told me with me till today.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they made huge impacts on you. And so I know that those things influenced you, obviously, as you mentioned, as a person, right? Really from when you first got, obviously, your dad from the jump, but obviously that middle school coach since you got introduced to him. But are some of those philosophies that maybe your dad might have taught you, like on the level of, just father to son thing, and then also the middle school coach that whatever he taught you and obviously all those conversations, do you take some of those things and implement them into your coaching philosophy now, even though it's been X amount of years since that time and you've been through all these different places, right? Is that something that you still use and still take pieces of that into it today's as a coach?
I do. I feel like, one of the biggest things that they both taught me was to be honest with my players. Never promise anything that you can't deliver. Don't promise playing time. Don't promise, you're going to be a starter. Make them earn it and be honest with them. Tell them what your expectations are of them. And I think one of my philosophies, because, I was raised that family was the most important thing in the world. And that's the way I treat my team. And, my team knows that. They know that I'm here for them no matter what, whether it's on the court, off the court, in the classroom, whatever they need. They know I'm here for them, even if it's to sit in my office and have a conversation where they do all the talking and they just need somebody to listen. And right. I think that, that has helped me to be successful in this business that so many people fail in. And but I credit that to those two men because they taught me how to be a good family man as well as a good person. And I think honesty really plays a big part with my players because they know I don't pull any punches when they make mistakes. I'm on them, but I build from that. I teach them how to correct those mistakes and to get better. But I also feel as a coach, especially at my level, because I have young adults that I'm coaching, that I need to help them in all areas. It's not just about what they do in the classroom or what they do on the court, but it's the social aspect of it. Growing up to be a good person, to be a good adult, to be a good family person. And the more that I can teach them, I know they have parents that do a great job with them, but they spend most of their time with me. So I have to be a good role model for them,
influence them.
I don't know any other way to do it.
Yeah, no, I 100% understand that. So, and, but going back to what you mentioned about like telling the truth and being honest with your athletes, I actually just spoke, it seems like I've had that conversation a little bit more recently. Is that something that is that something, I guess you can answer however you want to take this. I don't really know how to ask it, but I'll do my best here. So being honest with athletes, right? So as you mentioned, if they make a mistake or when you're recruiting them, you're going to be honest up front with them. Is that something that you have either heard or seen that happens with throughout coaching or whether that's currently or in the past? Is that something that has been, done? I'm assuming it has. I know it has, but is that something just like on your side of things that you've seen or heard that might make you stand out to some of these other, not naming any names, but why some those relationships get built the way you build them?
I think a lot of it is that I've seen the other side of it. I haven't always been a head coach. I've been a head coach for a long time, but I started out as an assistant coach, and I've seen the other side of it, where sometimes you're trying to motivate a player, but I think sometimes it can go the wrong way. And for me, I even when I have before I got on with you, I had a recruiting call with a potential recruit from New Mexico.
Oh, really?
And I had a great conversation with her. And one of the things I said to her was, I'm going to be upfront with you, I'm going to be honest with you. And this is the way we do things. And this is what we expect of our student athletes. And, you know, not everybody, a lot of times recruits want to hear, I guess that fairy tale where a coach tells them, hey, you're going to come here, you're going to be a star, you're going to be playing 40 minutes a game, you're going to be a
Yeah.
starter, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. My feeling is if I tell kids that and they come here, they're coming under false pretenses. And
Right.
I don't want anybody to come here and accuse me of not being upfront with them. So, do I get every recruit? Absolutely not. No coach does. Being upfront and honest, do I lose recruits from here and there? I don't know. I guess you'd
Yeah.
have to ask them. But I think if you asked any former player or any current player that I have right now or that I've had, I think they would all tell you they had a great experience and that I treated them fairly and I treated them like my own.
Right. And I know that, like junior college, in my opinion, is super fascinating, being a 2-year school, right? And I've heard this before. I didn't think of it. Somebody else mentioned it, but perfect, I guess phrase here or title is it's like a trampoline if you take it correctly as an athlete and as a coach, but also it's a revolving door, right? Like you're recruiting every 2 years or excuse me, every year. You don't have the 4 years of building, right, of that 4-year program and stuff. So I think it's super fascinating how you do it. And so you mentioned that you were talking to an athlete from my home state of New Mexico. And so it sounds like you are not only recruiting, like it sounds like you'll look for athletes kind of across the board. It doesn't just have to be in that area of, the tri-state or whatever you'd call it, right in that North New England area. So, I mean, how are you looking for athletes? What kind of sticks out to you when it comes to an athlete, right? As a basketball, like I'm obviously not a basketball coach. I didn't really play basketball growing up. A little bit, but not to these guys and girls levels, right? But so like as a coach, what are you looking for an athlete? Where are you finding them, and what are you trying to bring into your program to not only fit what you're building, but also to be successful in that 2 years in 2 years versus that 4 years?
Well, you definitely hit the nail on the head when you said revolving door. I use that term all the time because it is, you go to a 4-year university and you're bringing those freshmen along slowly a lot of times because you can mature them, you can develop them. I have to expedite those things because, they're here today and they graduate tomorrow. So, I have a short window to really work with these young ladies. And for me, when answering your question as far as where I look, I don't have any boundaries. Currently, I have a player from Spain on my team that I recruited. I have a player from California that I recruited on my team right now. Excuse me. Last year, I had the player of the year in the conference was my point guard from South Dakota. So,
oh wow, so you're going all over, yeah.
I do my research. I might not have loved homework when I was a student, but I love it now. I love doing my homework. I love watching film. I love talking to kids, their parents, coaches. But when I look for a recruit, I'm looking for not obviously first and foremost, what catches your eye is that they can play,
Right.
but I love versatility. I love players that can play multiple positions, can excel in different areas of the game, aren't one-dimensional, so to speak.
Yep.
But I also look for that kid when I'm watching that interacts with their coaches in a positive manner. They're a good teammate. When they go to the bench, they don't go sit on the end of the bench, because they're upset. They sit in the middle or they sit at the front. They're constantly in the game. When somebody comes off the bench and does something well, they're jumping up and down and cheering from the bench. Like, I'm looking for those traits. I'm looking for you're a good student, first and foremost. You're a good athlete. Obviously, we're recruiting you to be an athlete. And
course.
then above all else, you're a good person.
Mm.
And, when you put those things together, the good teammate, the coachable, those things all come along. And like I said, I'm all about the family atmosphere. So, I want to bring good people into my family, and that's what I look for.
Yeah. And so mentioning, I guess since we're on the topic of recruiting, um, I know that like you said, you'll go after pretty much anybody that kind of fits what you're building there. So I guess I have a two-parter here again, because recruiting is probably one of my favorite things about getting kids to the next level as a high school coach, but also my goal is to coach collegiately. So I think that's going to be like my favorite part. I don't know, but I hope so. But I guess as a junior, yeah, I mean, who knows? I'll cross that bridge, but I love the same thing. Like I love talking. That's why I do this, right? I love talking to coaches. I love talking
Right.
to athletes. So I think I have some of it down. We'll see when that time comes. But like when it comes to your athletes, you mentioned you're not afraid of going after anybody. So are you kind of focusing on the high school senior that's coming in as a freshman, or are you also looking at maybe some of the D1 bounce backs or D2 bounce backs that kind of had a rough first year, things like that? I mean, what's kind of your, for one, maybe take on that, but what do you kind of like to brew up in your locker room?
I mean, honestly, if there's a good situation in the transfer area, you're going to entertain it. But I think my primary focus is always that high school senior, um, that we can give an opportunity to.
Right.
At the JUCO level, you get such a wide range of talent. Um, just because we're a Division III school doesn't mean we have all Division III talent.
Yep.
I think the recruiting does. We're able to draw kids that could definitely play higher than D3. But I also think we have a good situation, and I think that draws kids from all different levels of talent to us. But excuse me, but I will say to one of the things you just mentioned that recruiting is such a fun part of this job,
Right.
but it's also a stressful part of this job, especially at the JUCO level, because you're not only competing from a recruiting standpoint with other JUCOs, you're competing with those 4-year schools as well.
Yeah.
So, big D1 NCAA schools, they're recruiting against other NCAA Division I schools.
Right.
For us, we're recruiting against everybody. So I feel like it's us against the world when it comes to recruiting, but I love it. It's a challenge, but it is fun. It is fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy it because I get to talk to so many young student athletes. I get to talk to parents. I get to talk to coaches, high school coaches, travel ball coaches, things like that. And you know what? You hear so many stories and so many things about different kids. It's great. I love it. But
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think I like where I'm at. I like being at the JUCO level. I think my job's a little harder than that 4-year university coach, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
It's crazy you said that. I literally just mentioned that to the soccer. I just had a junior college soccer coach on here, and I said the same thing. I felt like a 2-year school might be, and I'm not discrediting 4-year at all. I know how difficult it is, right, and all that, and I know college coaching in general is difficult. But I think that the 2-year, just because you have such a short time frame, because you can't develop like you want, and like you mentioned, the recruiting thing does play a factor into not only the success that you can see at your school in JUCO, which obviously there's a lot of factors outside of that. I don't know. I'm not really going to discuss them. That's for episode number 2. But I know that there's a lot of factors to any college coach, right? New school, old school, good culture, or whatever, right? There's a lot of things, geographics, play factor, all of that. But I do agree. I think that you do have a tough job, especially as you mentioned, breaking down how difficult it might be to find a recruit. So, I mean, are you looking for, like you mentioned, you're recruiting against everybody. So are you kind of looking for underrated and under-recruited athletes, or are you kind of looking for athletes who you might be able to, are you going after a girl who might be getting recruited by, Washington, a D2 school in Washington, and then NAI in Virginia and blah blah blah, right? Like, are you going after those type of girls, trying to as well, or are you kind of just, as you've said, done your research to be like, this girl can compete, she's under recruited type of thing? Like, what's your approach and segue on that?
I mean, there no stone unturned. I'm looking everywhere. I'm looking at everyone. I I have my levels. I know when there's a kid, I know she's a guaranteed D1. I know, not that I'd be wasting my time, but I know that it's a long shot to get a kid that has that potential and is already at that level, and they're being recruited by 2/3 of the schools in the country. But I love finding that kid, that underrated kid that you see play, you see all those little intangibles, but they're not getting the exposure. They're not getting recruited at that at a higher level. And to bring them in here, like, it's finding a needle in a haystack sometimes, but it's, for me, I know what I believe they're capable of. And when I get them here and I'm able to coach them up, then I know they're able to hit, their heights as a student athlete. And, but yeah, I mean, I'm also looking at that kid that I think, yeah, she's being recruited by D2 schools, D3 schools. But I know I have a shot, and I think that I can give her a different situation, even a better situation sometimes. We have nice facilities, we have a nice, big, clean, safe school, and academically we have a great staff here. So I believe in what I do. I believe in my coaching staff, but I think we have a lot to offer. So I'm not afraid to go after that kid that maybe at a higher level from a recruiting standpoint. I'm not afraid to go after them and bring them here, let them look around and see what we have to offer. And you know what? If that bigger school wins out, I wish them the best of luck. Right. But I'm not afraid to go after them either.
No, I like that. Yeah, like you said, no stones unturned. So whenever you're speaking about, like, as a junior college, right? Every I guess the idea is that you're trying to get them, and most girls probably want to go to a 4-year school after they're done with you, right? I know not everybody does, but that's kind of what I'm going to assume is most of the athletes' goals. So is it hard for you to get them out of a junior college? And I know you're mentioning like Division III. I know there's 2 or 3 divisions within JUCO. So is it difficult to get them out of 1, 2, or 3? Versus, I don't. To be honest with you, I'm a little undereducated on like D1, D2, D3, and JUCO. So excuse me for that. But is it difficult to get the athlete out of that, let's just say D3 JUCO versus a D1 JUCO, simply because of whatever factors may be, or is it just kind of like the same relative blueprint goes for everybody? If you can play, you can play.
Right. Now, I mean, you're right there. I mean, we have at the JUCO level, you have D1, D2, D3, just like they do at the NCAA level. The difference is D1 can offer scholarships, even at the JUCO level. D2 can offer partial scholarships at the JUCO level. D3, we're the little guy. We have to rely on academics. And what we have to offer. And I think that you're right. Not all the kids that come to JUCO are looking to continue at a 4-year university, but a lot of them are. And I feel it's my job to help facilitate that, to sit down with them and make a game plan of what we want to do, where they're looking to go. Are they looking to go far? Are they looking to stay more local to where they reside? Are they looking D2, D3, or are they looking specifically D3 because they feel it's a better fit for them? My job is to reach out to those coaches of these different schools, open that line of dialogue up with them, put my player on the map to them.
Yep.
Film is readily available to all these coaches, so they can watch us play. They don't have to walk into our gym to see us play. They can go online, pull up any of our game films, and this way it gives them an idea to see how these student athletes play, and then they can reach back out to me and say, hey, we're interested. Can we reach out to her? And that's what we do. I've been lucky. I have great kids, first of all. Like I said, I had the player of the year in our conference last year. She was from South Dakota. The year before that, I had a player from New Jersey who was not only the player of the year, but she was a third-team All-American and actually had her jersey hanging at the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame for the past 12 months.
Wow.
So
that's impressive.
There's a lot going on at our level of play that I don't think people are really aware of. But the talent level is really amazing.
Yeah. No, I actually, it's hard for me because, I shouldn't say hard for me. I actually look up sometimes on a Saturday, like if I'm watching football or whatever the games are, or like my particular sport, like wrestling, like sometimes I'd rather watch junior college or NAI versus over Division I, not because I don't enjoy, right? Obviously, I love the passion. I love everything about D1. It's fine, dandy, no argument here. But sometimes I like to watch the little bit smaller. For one, it helps the viewership for the school or conference or whatever. But also, I think there's some really good games that you get to watch down there, right? Like, and I follow a lot of JUCO recruiting people and JUCO schools on X and all these places, just because I find it interesting to see. And then it's cool to see, them say, oh, X person from X school gets offered from South, SIUE or whatever, right? Like all these different places. So it's really cool to see that. So yeah, I think that for me personally, I enjoy watching it. So I like that, today and where it used to be, you don't have to leave your home. You don't have to leave your office to recruit somebody, at least on initial viewer and observation of them. So fair.
That's true.
Yeah, and I think that, and I know I kind of jumped ahead to recruiting. I kind of want to ask one more question about you and how you grew up, at least right now. Don't know, but I think so.
Yeah.
But I know you mentioned kind of like when you got started. I know you talked about, when you thought about doing this and really how your thought process was at that time and what made you want to do this. So I guess let me ask you this. What was and if it's really long, because I like to ask a timeline, right? So I like to ask where you started versus where you're at now. So you can, and I tell this to people who have been there for probably longer than 10 years into a game, just because there might be 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 schools. If you want to name all of them, you can. If you want to paraphrase, I want to paraphrase, with a burger too. If you want to paraphrase, that's fine. But just let us know, kind of how long you've been doing this. 36 years, I know you mentioned roughly in that time frame, but kind of where you started and how you got to where you're at now.
Well, I haven't been at that many schools. I started out as an assistant with the varsity boys team at St. John Newman High School in South Philadelphia, which is where I graduated from.
Okay.
I took an assistant position there. I spent a handful of years there as an assistant coach, learning, the system and everything. But I had familiarity with it because that's where it was my alma mater. I moved on to a private school after that, where I actually was not only with the basketball team, but I was also the varsity baseball coach, the head varsity baseball coach. So I spent 5 years there, had success there, which was great. And then things changed. I took my first job as a girls basketball coach. And that was 25 years ago that I took, I spent the first 11 on the guys' side, on the boys' side. And then, I had some hesitancy. I never coached girls. I literally had 2 sons, then, and I was like, do I want to jump? on the other side of the fence. And I'll tell you what, my wife talked me into it, to be honest with you. And I went into a situation where the athletic director basically told me, this is going to be a tough road ahead. It's a small program. Nobody really knows anything about it. And I spent 10 years there and turned it into a nationally recognized high school girls program. And I loved every second of it. I went from there, and I actually was going to take a break. I was the athletic director at that school as well for a number of years. I was going to take a year off just to kind of get rejuvenate and get going. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, before you take a year off," he said, "how about you come and help me out?" He was a rival coach at another school in our division. I went over, helped them out for a year. They had one of the best years in school history. I enjoyed it. I got to see a different program, a different side of a coach who coached against me for the previous 4 years. And then I took a job at a high school here in New Jersey, at Our Lady of Mercy Academy. It was a private girls prep school. And I coached 2 years there. We had success, led them to the state playoffs 2 years in a row. And then I got a phone call about coaching at Camden County College. And the rest I've been here 11 years now. And we have been nationally ranked 4 times in my previous 10 years, including the last 3 seasons. Unfortunately, we lost in our conference championship the last 2 years, but we're 4-1 right now, and we're playing well. And I have mostly freshmen on my team. I only have one sophomore. One sophomore right now. The rest are all freshmen, so they're still learning how to play at the college level. And it's daily conversations on the do's and the don'ts at this level, and how to conduct themselves, how to go about things. Just travel, getting on the bus, what we should be wearing, what we should have in our bag. So, but like I said, I loved coaching the boys. It was a different style game. We don't play above the rim like the boys do, we play team defense, and there's no individual stars on my team. They're all about the ultimate goal, and that's winning a championship. And, I think every step along the way of those 36 years, I've learned different things, how to adjust, how to modify certain things. But I think, I've grown as a coach. I think I'm the best I've ever been right now, but there's a lot of people that have helped me to be where I am right now. I mean, there's a million coaches, I'm sure, that are much better coaches than I am, but for where I'm at and the teams that I have, I think I'm the right person for the job.
I love that, man. I love where you started and how you got there, and just tenacity, persistence, just continuing to keep going. And even when you wanted to quit, you didn't. And that goes a long way. I think that's something that can be taught to, people who are listening, but in general, as a coach, you want to give that to your athletes too, like that mental break that you think you need to quit, right? You want to give up on a play, give up on a drive, whatever sport they play, right? That can go really far to pass that along to them. Like, hey, get through it and we'll be just fine. So you've spent a lot of time, in this game in general, right? Between high school boys and girls, or you even spent some time as a baseball coach, and obviously now you're at the collegiate level. So tell me, what do you love about coaching, and tell me if there's anything that you dislike about it, if there is.
Well, I mean, I think that from a positive standpoint, it's the interaction with my players. getting to see them on a daily basis, but being able to help them not only to grow as basketball players, but as people. And I love it. I couldn't ask for a better job. On the downside, if there is one, it's the politics of it. There's always things that you have to deal with that really don't affect the kids
Right.
in the big picture. It's little things that you deal with that you have to, as a coach, you deal with, and you try to shield your players from it so they don't have to deal with it, and they can just enjoy the experience of being a college student athlete. And but again, any walk of life, whatever job you have, there's always politics involved.
Right.
That if you took them out, it would make life so much better. But
Sure.
the pros outweigh the cons by so much for what I do, and I can't say enough about it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the. I personally think when it comes to sports of basketball and baseball and football, I think I'd probably do a pretty good job of like judgment call who should probably be a starter, right? And I've had this conversation with one or two other coaches, but I think that it can be difficult to where like an athlete and you might be, and I don't know, right? I can say this from like when I played at high school athletics, what it was, that you were in that, coaches are choosing who they want to play, right? There are sometimes those politics, whether an athlete may feel it or community or whoever might feel like, this person gave us the most money for booster, or this person did the most, blah, blah, blah. They may not be the best athlete in this particular position, but because of all the other things that happen politically, or there's some politic red flags that people may think are there, even though there might not be at all. The coaches truly think so, right? But there's that idea that, in basketball, coaches are choosing the best five, right? And and that's how it goes. So I feel like, politically speaking, that's something that I give you guys respect for, because that's probably some backlash you guys I'm sure you felt that at some point in your career. I'm sure you haven't always made everybody happy on who's your starting five every game, but I'm assuming that's something that you've had to overcome in the past, right?
Absolutely. I think you get more of that at the high school level.
Okay.
And you deal with it. I think more often. Not everybody has to deal with it in a negative way, but I think more often you do hear it and see it at the high school level. At the college level, I've been fortunate. The parents really are great. They come and they cheer and they root their kids on. They root the team on. They always have nothing but good, positive things to say to me. But, I don't know if they get in the car and on the way home, they're saying, Coach
Right.
Chip is crazy. He don't know what he's doing. My kid should be playing another 20 minutes a game. But I can't let that factor in on how I do my job. My job is to do what's best for the team and for each individual kid. So, yes, do some play more than others? Absolutely. Do some start over others? Of course they do. But
Of course.
I think, again, it goes back to being upfront, being upfront with my players and them understanding their role on the
Yep.
team makes it a lot easier when the starting lineup is announced and how minutes are dueled out in certain situations. So,
I can see that. Yeah. Obviously, I guess collegiately that definitely does make more sense that you don't see it as much. At least you haven't encountered that as much in that aspect. And, I think that, I guess for me being a wrestling coach, it's a little bit easier, right? Because you wrestle off and whoever wins that match is the starter. That's kind of how we do it, right? Unless there's some other variables that are more of like, attitude or getting in trouble, right? Things like that. But if you guys are both showing up, doing the right things, you guys wrestle 2, 3, whatever it is, one of one, best out of three, whatever that time frame is in the season, you're the guy or girl. So I just kind of I always ask. I've never really asked that question 100%, but I think that it's a good what's the right term? It was a good topic to have for some of the coaches who may be experiencing that, whether they're in high school or maybe even college who listen to this, or in that, it doesn't have to be basketball, but you guys are all, if you're in that one of those sports, right, you're going to have to, overcome parents, or you're going to have to overcome that like internal, I'm sure it breaks your heart sometimes, right? Somebody who might put in all the work all summer, all year, they're here every single day grinding, but they're truly, and don't get me wrong, the other person's not just showing up and starting, but, like that person puts every single ounce of their heart into your team and the program, but they still might not be the best person in that role, especially I'm sure when it gets to like conference and when you get towards the back half of the season, when those wins in conference matter to get to the postseason, I'm sure that kind of breaks your heart a little bit. So, I mean, how do you, I know you said you're up front with the athlete, so it may not be as bad, but I'm sure that still it tugs you on heart a little bit, right? So how do you as a coach, like whenever you go home, how do you kind of overcome that? Is there anything that you have to overcome, or is it just part of the game and that's just what you have to, eventually you do it so long that you just kind of become numb to it?
No, I mean, I think you feel it. I think if it didn't bother you a little bit, you wouldn't be human, I mean,
right.
You have those kids that they work hard, they're there every day, they do what you ask them to do, they do it to the best of their ability, but there's always going to be that back end of the bench and that don't play that often, or when they do, they don't play that many minutes.
Right.
Yeah, you would love to get them more time. You would love to see them go out there and be able to do everything that they set out to do. But again, I have a job to do, and
right.
But I had these conversations with those kids when they're feeling a little down about the lack of playing time, and they want to know what they can do to possibly change that, what they can do better. And, we'll sit down and we'll have that conversation. I mean, I know for them sometimes it's hard to hear certain things, but again, it's being upfront with them, being honest, not giving them false hope, but trying to give them a way to turn it into a positive. And
right.
I think when you win, I think that helps in that area as well. But, I honestly, I don't go home and block it out, but I also don't go home and let it stress me out either.
Right.
I've tried to learn over the years how to compartmentalize my job and my home life. Do I take my job home with me? I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I absolutely do. But, I don't let it affect the things I do at home, just like I don't let things at home affect my job. I mean, my job is to be there for everybody, I mean, and yeah, coaches, you'll have coaches that'll tell you it's not an easy thing to juggle, but you know what? We do it, and we do it because we love what we do. We love our players. We love our family. We're not gonna spite our family for our players, and we're not going to do the other way either. I've learned to be able to be a good parent, a good husband, a good brother, but I've also learned how to be a good coach and a mentor, where I'm not allowing things going on over here to affect the things that are going on over here. And was I always like that? Absolutely not. But you learn with age, and hopefully you get better with age as well.
Right. And I mean, and part of that too, sometimes, like, as you mentioned, you're obviously recruiting kids, what you see in high school. You might go see them in person, I'm sure, if they're close to you. But some kids just don't develop like you would hope so, or hope for, right? Like, they might be this person that you see in high school that shows all of the potential in the world, but they just don't develop how you might have seen or what you might have thought. And it might not be necessarily the coaching. It might not be who you're playing. It might just, they might have internal things. They might have outside sources right there. There's a lot of things that go into development in college that some athletes just don't. They just might not get initially or ever.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure that plays a big factor as well. So I mean that kind of leads into. I have some stuff I want to ask you, but I'm gonna wait a little bit towards the end. I like to end on a lighter note because we, these questions here I like to go with. So, so knowing that you've coached some high school teams to, from I wouldn't say death, but from pretty dang close to being recognized, regionally and nationally, and now you've had a nationally ranked program at Camden. How do you build a successful culture on the level of buy-in and mindset?
I think consistency. I really don't change who I am or how I do things. I stay true to myself and my beliefs, and I kind of look at myself like a people person. I talk to everybody I see, whether I'm at the store or the gas station or I'm at work or at home.
Right.
I like to engage in conversation. I like to get to know people. I'm a friendly, outgoing person. And I think my players feed off of that. I think they know that I'm genuine, that I am there for them, that I will fight for them to the end. But I am going to, treat them like young adults, but I also have to nurture them along the way. And so I do. Sometimes I probably come off sounding like dad instead of coach. And sometimes I get that look on their face, but they know where it's coming from. It's coming from a good place. And I think I've built a good culture. And people always say, what's culture? But I think it's the way you do things. I think it's,
Yep.
that you're consistent in the way you handle not only yourself, but the people around you. My coaching staff are my family. My assistant coaches, they're both half my age. I started coaching before they were born. And they don't hold that over me most of the time, but
Right, yeah, most of the time, right?
it's most of the time, but it's but I love them. They show up, they work hard, and they have a lot of the same beliefs I do. And they didn't come from the same backgrounds I did. We all came from different backgrounds. We all had different reasons why we played or why we wanted to coach. Do we have disagreements? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, we're on the same page.
Yep.
We work hard to get there. And but I believe in that culture and that philosophy that you build around your program. And I think the success that my program has had shows that we are consistent in the way we do things. And I have no intention of changing them, whether I'm here 5 more years or 10 more years.
Yeah.
I expect it not to change.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think that it's what you're doing, and what you're doing every day is what your culture is as a program. And obviously there's things that come from that to your athletes, or that your athletes gain, that are just kind of come naturally. They kind of come that are associated with it. But 100%, I agree. On what culture is. And what you mentioned there. So do you think that culture is, and it's more of maybe an opinion thing here. I guess they're all opinions, but this one's truly, it might be something that you haven't thought about, but have you noticed like buy into your culture or buy into what you're building there? Like, is it easier to see that from athletes who live in New Jersey or might be from down the way versus like you mentioned, a girl who came from Cali or from South Dakota or from X amount of miles away? Like, do you see a difference in somebody who's buying into you and your program when it comes to like local versus distance?
I think there's a little difference. I mean, honestly, I think the kids that are further away have to buy in because they're, I guess they're risking a lot more. They're leaving home. They don't get to drive home and see mom and dad after every practice or after every game. They don't have the luxury of mom and dad being in the gym for every home game and some road games. Their communication is via the phone.
Yep.
Maybe they can FaceTime or, call once a night and things like that. But they have to buy in my opinion, they have to buy in even more because those, not just the players, but the parents, because those parents are trusting me with the welfare of their daughters.
Yep.
And I take that responsibility serious. And,
Sure.
again, it goes back to me being a parent. I look at these kids like they're my own. I treat them like they're my own. When they leave, I can't follow them all home and make sure that, they get in. I have to trust that they're being responsible adults, but that goes back to the conversations that I have with them as well.
Right. And so so kind of speaking on that, actually not really speaking on that. I 100%, I love that you take that with such a seriousness to, and I think it's not just, I think that's all college coaches too. And I mean, I took that serious, just in high school, making sure that, whenever we go on a trip, everything is accounted for. We make sure that they're safe, right? Obviously the people are trusting me to get my kids or those kids 6 hours, 8 hours away to come back on Sunday or Saturday night from a tournament. So 100% agree. Do you guys travel pretty far for your during season, or do you guys kind of stay in that New England area for season until obviously I'm serving postseason playoffs, right? Those things are different, but for most of your season stuff, are you guys going to tournaments that your girls get seen? Are you staying locally, regionally? I mean, what's that look like in your program?
For the most part, we're not going that far. I mean, New Jersey, Philadelphia, other parts of Pennsylvania, New York, Maryland, Delaware. We have schools on our schedule from year to year, West Virginia. But excuse me, but not crazy traveling.
Not crazy.
For the most part. Now, again, once you get into the postseason, things change. Nationals, like the national tournament for JUCO Division III women's basketball this year is in Minnesota. So hopefully I'll be freezing in middle of March this year.
Yep.
But it's, I'd like to kind of travel a little bit more here and there. But again, Division III schools, they work on budgets and fundraising and things like that. And with us, it's different. I think if we were a 4-year program, you could generate, but your roster is changing overnight because of the revolving door that we have at the JUCO level. So it's a little harder for us to go too far out during the regular season, but you never know. I mean, those things could change.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of changes in my time here, so anything's possible.
That's cool. I mean that's on your horizon of hopes is to expand your traveling. So obviously mentioning hopefully you're hopefully spending that time in March in Minnesota freezing. How do you build a successful program on level of wins and longevity? And then how do you sustain that? And maybe not even longevity. How do you sustain or how do you build a successful program on the level of wins? And then how do you sustain that over time?
Well, I mean, when I first took over, to give you a JUCO reality, when I first took over, I had 6 players on my team my first year. Mm-hmm. None of them were returning players. It was an empty roster. So, I think it takes time. I didn't walk into a program that was already winning 15 to 20 games every year. I came into a program where they had one winning season in the last 5 years prior to me taking over.
Yeah.
My goal was to build numbers where practices were upbeat, energized, and because we had numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So my first year was a real culture shock for me because, I'm used to having 50, 60 kids come out for my high school team, and I walk in the door of a college and I have nobody.
Yeah.
So, but from my second year on, we've had numbers. We've had consistent numbers, good numbers. I have 16 players right now, 4 of which are not eligible for different reasons until the second half of the year. But I have 16 players in practice every day, working hard. But I think from a recruiting standpoint, once you got the ball rolling, you were able to talk to recruits about that. Hey, you can come in here and be a big part of our building this program into a successful program year in and year out. And I was able to start that ball rolling there really with my second team. And my fourth team that I had here had 21 wins. We were ranked as high as 7th in the country. And, things just kind of blossomed from there. I was able to build off of that. But again, it goes back to the culture. People know that when they come into my program and they talk to kids that have graduated out of my program, that it was the first thing out of their mouth was, it was a great experience.
Yep.
Not, oh, we won this many games, or we were nationally ranked both years I was there. The first thing out of their mouth is, I had a great experience. I loved being there. And to me, that's a win for me.
For sure.
Like, hearing that and knowing that. And that's pretty much been every kid that I've had come through my program. So I'm excited about the fact that not only are we successful, not only have we been nationally ranked 4 of the last 6 years, but people know who we are.
Yep.
I get, honestly, I get probably 50 emails a week from prospective student athletes all over the country and internationally as well. And that would have never have happened 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited that, and again, I know it's my name. I know I'm the head coach, but I've had good people around me that have helped our program to get to where they are.
Yeah, as a head coach, I know that you get all the love and or all the hate, right? You kind of get the great, you get the good, the bad, and the ugly from media and supporters and stuff like that. But 100%, your support staff and athletic directors and community play a huge factor into not only the buy-in of your athletes and what you're able to produce and your coaching staff, but also the support from them goes a long way for your athletes too, right? It's a kind of a selling tool, if you would. For athletes, at least I would assume so. So I agree with you. I think that having the right people around you make all the difference, right? Look at any professional team, look at any high school team. They have the right people around them to relay the message, to create the practices, whatever you're looking. 100, you have to have the right people around you in order for you to find success. So I love that you're humble enough to, even though you are the person on the headline saying, Coach Chip is the leading this team to 7 national, whatever ranking, you're able to pass along some of that success along to the people who are maybe behind the scenes or maybe not get the love. So I love that. Do you have any advice for any struggling coaches or maybe new coaches, maybe coaches who are new to the game or new to, from middle school to high school or maybe first year from high school to college or, JUCO to NAI, whatever it is, right? Do you have any advice for new coaches and or struggling coaches?
I think one of the things is that I can say is don't ever believe you know everything. You never stop learning. You always get better. You can always get better, and rely on other people. Reach out to veteran coaches. Reach out to coaches that have been around a long time, that have been at a certain level for a long time, that understand what it's like to go from a struggling program to a successful program, or to rebuild a program into something. And I think when you try to do it on your own, it's difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times coaches, they get into a situation and they hire assistant coaches that they can, kind of control. And I want my assistant coaches to challenge me. I want them, just like my job is to make them better every day. I want them to make me better every day. And I think that young coaches, new coaches, transitioning coaches from one level to the next, I think absolutely don't be afraid or ashamed to reach out to somebody that could be a mentor to you, right, to help you facilitate, to guide you in the right direction. Or you don't have to listen to everything that they say. You don't have to take it all to heart and do everything they do. But one little thing could be the change.
Yeah. Well, I love that you mentioned that because, I have reached out to many coaches, and I've even talked to college coaches about if I ever got the chance to go to college, kind of like what to look for and stuff, just because it's so intriguing to me whether that happens or not, right? But that's kind of why I do this exactly why I do that. Well, not all of the exact reasons, but it's definitely a part of why this podcast is even a thing, right? Is hopefully, for me, I started it selfishly because I just wanted to talk to coaches about like how I can become a better coach, because I was listening to other shows and stuff, but they're all professionals. I wanted to hear from high school coaches, smaller school coaches, right? And don't get me wrong, like I'd love to talk to Nick Saban or Bill Self or whomever, right? Oh my gosh, why can't I think of his name? From UConn, girls basketball coach from UConn.
Gino Auriemma.
Gino, I couldn't remember. Yes, Gino Auriemma. Like, I love to talk to these coaches too, but I know that there's a lot of gems from that coaches who are not on that level too, and so for me, I did this because I selfishly started it, but I think that people who listen to this can take gems, and as you're mentioning, it might not be everything, right? You might not want to hear everything that's on the show, or on the second episodes we talk like the coaching philosophies deeper, but just maybe you'll learn something and utilize it into your everyday, right? And so I 1000% can say I appreciate it, because that's something that I do, and that's what I'm going to take from not only talking to you, but any other coach that I have on here, and put it into my everyday. So I will say we're down to the final question I've written down, and it's the name of the podcast. My favorite question of this is, what's your why? Why do you do this?
I do it because I love it. I love the kids. I love being around them. I love watching them grow. It's like being a parent. Watching my kids. I have 4 children of my own. Watching them take their first steps, watching them run. And that's what my players do. I see them come in and they walk through the front door, but they're running every day after, and I get to see them grow as people, not just athletes. And I mean, again, my why is because I love it.
I love it. I love that. You do it because you love it, and it's not a job whenever you do something you love. So 100%, I love that. So I want to finish off on kind of a fun question here.
Sure.
If you guys are still listening to this podcast at this point, if you're on YouTube, make sure you guys HTB hit that bell, like, subscribe, all the 9 yards. If you're an audio listener, Pocket Cast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, whatever you are. Make sure you guys leave a review, leave a star rating, say what you got to say, but whatever you say with your chest because we want to hear it. So, Coach, the final question I have for you is, what is the best high school? What's the best state for high school women's basketball right now, or girls basketball right now?
That's a tough one. I don't know. That's hard. That's a hard question because there's so many good young female basketball players around this country, and the game is just growing every day. Pennsylvania is always really good, and Texas is very good. Florida is another one, very good.
Yeah.
New Jersey is making its strides up that ladder. We've had some really good young female basketball players come out of here and go play at a really high level over the last 10 years. But it's just growing everywhere. I love being a proponent of women's basketball, and hopefully it just keeps skyrocketing.
I like to ask that question because if I ever get another girls basketball coach of whatever level, I like to ask that question just for fun argument's sake, right? Like I asked that in wrestling because there's a big debate in wrestling of which state's the best, right? And you're in debatably the best area in the country for wrestling: New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, right? And then there's some who argue like Ohio, Illinois, right in that area. And then you have some people who absolutely love California wrestling in high school. So between coaches, I like to kind of just, maybe I'm stirring the pot, who knows, but I like to throw that out there, but that's fair. Okay. Who's the best girls basketball player in the last 10 years to play in the WNBA?
Oh, wow. In the last 10 years,
maybe 15. Let's go like 2000. Let's say like 15, because I think like Candace Parker was like 08. So like right in that 2008 to 2010 range to now, the last 15 years. I
think you got to put Candace Parker up at the top. Sue Bird is another one that should be right up there. Lisa Leslie, I know she was a little bit before Candace Parker, but and you have so many great ones now that are out there. Brianna Stewart, Asia Wilson. There's just so many great women's basketball players. But I think Candace Parker, Sue Bird have to be two of the best over the last 15 years. You can't go wrong with either one of them.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm actually kind of upset that I didn't ask you about Caitlin Clark and what she's done for basketball the last, for women's basketball the last, 2-3 years, just because I know she's been such an icon for viewership and what she's kind of done to maybe potentially grow the sport of women's basketball. So has that, and I promise this is the last question, and then we'll get off, has that done any sort of influence to maybe you and what you might see in like the JUCO level, or is what she's done kind of just more of like helping the national stage view girls basketball and obviously get on TV more and things like that?
I don't think it's really impacted our level just yet. It definitely has impacted the national stage. I mean, there's no doubt. You saw how many arenas were sold out when she was playing, whether at home or away. But I think what she has done that doesn't get enough credit is advance the youth female basketball. I think you see more young girls, in that 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old range that they want to play now because they see Caitlin Clark and what she's doing. So I don't think that's got enough credit yet, how she's touched the younger generation just yet, because everybody sees the national audience that she's attracted. But I think you're going to see more and more of these younger kids getting involved in basketball. And that, again, is only going to make women's basketball that much stronger in the long run.
Heck yeah. But yeah, Coach, I 100% agree with what Caitlin Clark's done, and I really appreciate you jumping on today. I'd love to get you back on for another episode, maybe after season or maybe when it's a little bit slower for you, but I thought you gave me a lot of good gems and everybody listening, and yeah, I would love to have you back on at some point.
Hey, I love it. I appreciate you having me on today, and yeah, anytime, I'm more than happy to jump on with you anytime you want.
Hell yeah, I love that. I appreciate that as well, and everybody listening, I appreciate you guys tuning in to today's episode. And but with that being said, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.